we are at. All right, so welcome everybody. Just note that this is being recorded. It will be up on the YouTubes and maybe one day on TV. Who knows how far we'll go. But welcome. This is the House Committee interview. We are going to be speaking to, I hope, 3 fantastic panelists. We're just waiting for one of the panelists to join. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask the 2 panelists that are online to just briefly introduce themselves, your name, when you were a House Committee member, maybe what portfolios you had, and yeah, which community you represented. Ooh, Robynne, because your camera just came on, we'll start with you.
Sure thing. So when was this? Back in the day, 2018, 2019, I was at Sonop, Sonop Parker. My portfolios, if I remember correctly, was Fainsers, social media and marketing, and just diversity.
Nice. Thank you very much. Concise, to the point. We love to see it. Kristan, are you here?
I am here. Hello, Mama, and others. Thank you so much for having me. So, yeah, my name is Kristan Sharpley, but you can call me Chris. And I was a hawker really back in the day, 2016, 2017, for Silene PSO. And other things in between that, but last year I also was the co-opted House Committee member for Eendrag men's residence, and that was quite an experience. So yeah, that's kind of my contribution to the panel, I suppose, today.
Sure. I love this panel because you think House Committee is one thing, but you're all representing so many different facets of House Committee, which is awesome. Like House Committee in residence is so different to House Committee in a PSO, being like the external House Committee member in a residence. And Thandeka Sibanda, when she does join, she's our 3rd panelist. She is a Hawker member on Tygerberg campus. So,
I'm here.
Are you here? Goodness gracious. Giving Tygerberg a bad name coming so late, madam.
No, I've been here. It's just my Wi-Fi just wasn't letting me in. But yeah.
We're happy to have.
Awesome. As Wama's already said, my name is Thandeka Sibanda, and I am a House Committee member of Huis, Francie, Zijl on the Tygerberg Medical Campus. And my portfolios are media and marketing, secretary, and leadership.
Nice. Thank you very much. Welcome to the 3 of you. Thank you for making the time to be part of this hot interview. You're all in the hot seat now, and there's no turning back. It's all been recorded. We know that you're here. So that being said, I'm going to jump right into the questioning. So that the sweating happens all at once and then it's over before you know it. So this is just a very basic, easy question. In your communities, your respective communities that you were hawker for, how did, I don't know, maybe things changed. How did the application process work? Just really practically, what do you have to do to apply to be a hawker member? Is it a form? Is it an email to the president? Is it a special phone call? Whatever it takes. So just for the community you represented or communities you represented, how did that work? Let's start with Thandi because she just finished talking.
Okay, super awesome. So I hope I'm not lying, but the application process works like this. The Primaria sends out the invitation for people to apply. It's a form that you fill in. You have a campaign option where you present your picture and your vision and whatever it is that you want to be known by your residents on a picture. And you also collect 2 letters of recommendation from whoever else is in your residence. And you have, I think, about 7 people that second your application just to vouch for your character and just to like let the people know that you are a good candidate for the House Committee. And yeah, you send your CV that has all of the things that you achieved in your university career. Yeah, that is pretty much it.
All right, thank you. Yeah, that was very comprehensive. Thank you. I'm sure there's a bunch of Francie people going to be watching this who are taking notes and are ready to apply. I don't know, maybe they've applied already. Thank you for that, Thandi. Robynne, let's jump to you.
Okay, so can you hear me first and foremost?
Definitely.
Okay. So in Sonop, when I was applying for HARCA, it was a very basic application process where it was a piece of paper, filled in your name, the year of study, your involvement on campus, res, and then short motivation. Then you just gave it into the prom, she put it on the wall in the foyer, and everyone who's anyone came and read your application, which is already pretty nerve-wracking. But what we found was this process was so rigid that it was just this piece of paper, and no one could really like get to know you if you weren't out there in res. So what we did in my HARCA term was we changed this process a little to just have each candidate send in a short video that is then distributed via like a link to the house, so that you can basically just campaign for yourself, so people can get to know you past the piece of paper. Because we all know that it's not uncommon for someone who is popular in res to then become HARCA without really campaigning and putting their vision out there. So I think this process has really opened up for the little guy, sort of. Yeah, I really appreciate this new process.
Well done to you guys for bringing that in. We love to see change. We love to see good change, positive change. Yeah, and also thank you. That was also really comprehensive, pretty clear, pretty easy to understand, and kind of sounds like a fun process, maybe slightly stressful, but kind of sounds fun. Thank you, Robynne. Kristan?
So with regards to PSO application process, so obviously engagement with students is a lot limited than within a residence space. So we rely a lot in terms of social media platforms. So when I applied, it was very important to kind of ensure that the process in terms of the marketing of candidates was quite up to standard, so that students that perhaps weren't sure about whether they wanted to attend, or perhaps weren't even sure if they'd ever met the candidates before, kind of had an opportunity to kind of learn about them, what did they want to do with the role. So that was quite interesting. Then in terms of to reflect in terms of my co-opted HARCA role at Eendrag, so that was a very different process. It wasn't an application process. It was more, I wouldn't say interview, because interview is quite a weighted word, but it was kind of to see, what could you contribute to the space, and also kind of to see, did what you can contribute align with where the space needed to go. So it was a very, very different kind of process that followed, but it was, I must say, out of the experience I've had in so many different structures, it was one of the most memorable and I had the most value I gained, I think, out of that experience.
Sure. Thank you, Kristan. And just to clarify with the, we don't want to say interview because interview is a weighted word, but essentially, practically, would you be asked questions by people and then have to answer them in that application process?
So with being co-opted, the main engagement I had at that stage was just with the Prim at the time, which was Liam Kluter. So it was just that engagement, and also to kind of engage with the previous two co-opted HARCA members, to kind of gain some bit more insight and also understand what was I taking on, what was the commitment, what was the expectations of the role. So it was very much going in kind of with the lights off, but it was kind of like, as I think the most important thing was to understand what is the vision and mission of that existing haka at the time, and kind of to see, like, could I contribute? Did I see that how I could contribute to kind of enhance the experience they could give students, and also just in terms of the team dynamic, what could I contribute to that space? Yeah.
Okay. Wow, thank you. That sounds really exciting. We don't have it at Tygerberg, but maybe one day, some influential person's going to watch this interview and make waves in our constitution. Who knows? So all three of you are mentioning essentially that at the end of the day, to get into House Committee, you have to, one way or another, communicate your vision and who you are and what you're contributing or what you would like to contribute to the team. That can come in many different ways depending on your community. It could be a one-on-one conversation with a prim. It could be writing it on a piece of paper and having it pasted downstairs where you want to see. It could be having to send a video to the whole residence. It could be having to present everything at a caucus. No matter what that method is, it is very stressful. And I do think a lot of people tend to shy away from applying for things that they would be really good in, just because they're afraid of that pressure of that moment when they have to present honestly who they are, and maybe get questioned on where they want to take the role that they are trying to take on. So obviously the three of you must have done that communicating pretty well, on some level, be it the paper, be it the interview, be it the caucus, however it looked. So what strategies, what method, what preparation did you do, and what tips do you have for someone who might be really stressed about getting questions from their residents or getting questions from just having to write down their vision and motivation in an application form and being questioned why they want to do this. What tips do you have for someone going into like a caucus setting or an interview setting? What did you do, or what do you wish you had done? Kristan, I'll start with you because you just finished off.
So I think, looking back and also having obviously two very different experiences of serving on a House Committee, I would say the first thing is that it's very important to be honest with yourself, acknowledge what you know and acknowledge what you do not know, and why it is that you do not know what you don't know. And also, what are you going to do to take control and take ownership of gaining that required knowledge or that required development? And I also think it's very easy to be intimidated by the process itself. Sometimes you think, oh, maybe I wasn't at every event as much as, I don't know, Sarah, she was up there till 3 a.m. That it's very easy to I think be intimidated, by what did participation look like within that space, and I think it's important to kind of sit down with yourself and write it down. What do you bring to the table? What are the skills? What's the knowledge? The experience you have that kind of will add value to being a representative of your community. Reflecting on previous experience, I think is definitely key. And I think to also remember that the process and caucus itself is a conversation. It's a conversation that you're having with the community. And at the end of the day, remember that you're standing up there, in this case, it could be, MS Team style, but you're showing face because you want to be a representative of the people. So it's not about you, and you can't be trying to impress people and be talking to what you think people want to hear. And I think it's very dangerous if you go into the role thinking this is what people want to hear, because ultimately they're going to hold you accountable, I would hope, to what you say on that day or what you submit in an application process or in a 2-minute video or whatnot. So some practical tools I would advise is definitely to do a mock caucus. I think is the best way to do it, and not with your friend that's going to say, ooh, it was great, and you want someone that's going to challenge you and challenge your position on things and actually reveal and identify the gaps and say, I don't know what you're saying here, but I've never seen you do that, we'll be there, or that kind of thing. So I think it's very important to also ensure that you're also realistic with yourself and your expectations.
Sure. So much wisdom in there, so much. I always take notes in these interviews. I've been telling everyone that I'm writing a book. I'm not going to credit any of you, but regardless, I'm taking the notes. They're amazing. Yeah, I really love the things that you're touching on. Be honest with yourself. You don't want to present what you think everyone wants to hear, because the problem is that, yes, maybe that gets you into the position, but when you run into a crisis in the position, you will always fall back on who you really are. So you don't want to be in crisis and then be thinking, okay, this is who I am, but this is who I said I was at caucus. So now I must be who I said I was at caucus, even though I really just want to be myself. So start off being yourself and let the house choose that what you are saying you bring to the table is what they actually want for their community. Beautiful. Thank you. And yes, mock caucus is a thing, not with your friends, not with your family, or maybe do friends, family, and all the enemies you know. Like, do it with everybody. And it's not so that you can prepare these really rehearsed answers. It's so that you can see where the gaps are, where the knowledge gaps are, where how people are perceiving what you're saying, and how people are perceiving the things that you think you've done versus the way that it's come across to the house. Awesome. Thank you, Kristan. Robynne, you look really ready to jump in here.
So I was one of those people who actually didn't know that they wanted to be a haka before the time. But I was sitting, just chilling with the haka, with some of my friends that were on the haka before I was. And, we'd always just have these conversations that, just spoke about community and then what's happening in our communities and, what we can do. And I didn't even know that they had this little, plan in mind at the time. But they started asking me a whole bunch of questions as to like things within my res and things within our community and how I felt about it and what I would have done if I were to ever have the position. And by the end of the conversation, we all just looked at each other and I was like, no, guys, I know what you're doing. This is not going to happen. No, thank you. But at the end of the day, you realize that if you really feel passionate about the space that you're in and things that aren't working and things that you think or you believe you can change or contribute to changing, then definitely go for it. It is so stressful, yes. But at the end of the day, like Chris has said, like you have said, just remembering why you started, why you put yourself out there, why your face is on the wall for everyone to see. It is the most important part of that whole evening. It is so stressful. I was petrified. I was petrified the whole evening. I unluckily drew number 20 of 20 to deliver my speech. So I was petrified the entire evening. But what really just kept me going was that I'm here for a reason. I put myself out there for a reason, and I'm going to, whether I'm voted in or not, I'm going to put it out there. Maybe someone will capture these ideas that I have, the vision that I have, and take it forward. Because at the end of the day, you need to be working for your community and not just like for like your own achievement.
Beautiful. And it's incredible because I've gotten to work with you. I've gotten to work with all three of you. But we're working together now on SRC, fun times. And I'm just seeing how fantastic of a person you are and how fantastic of a leader you are. And it's just really interesting that you said, you're one of those people that didn't know that they wanted to be haka. I always joke that a lot of great leaders were born or are born in that last hour before applications are due. Like people scramble to download and submit like right on the deadline. And it's not because you are chaotic or unprepared for haka. It's just that you're realizing that haka is the perfect outlet for the person you have always been. So clearly your friends saw that you were really passionate about this and that you had a lot of knowledge, you already had the skills. And then they were just showing you one of the routes you could take to express who you already are. Beautiful. Thank you. Thandi.
Hey.
Hey, I thought your wife was out again.
No, I was kicked out, but then I managed to get back in. I would say just in terms of the caucus setting, especially that obviously now it's going to be online, really do take time to think about what you've been asked, and if there's anything in the question that you do not understand, seeking clarification. Because the past two caucuses that I've watched, I've come to learn that if there's nothing wrong with you seeking clarification for the questions that you don't understand, and just being aware of not only issues that plague your community, but issues that plague the greater worldly community. So right now, there's talks around gender-based violence. There's talks about Black Lives Matter. Look at those things and see how those different topics influence your residence space, because people will want to know, okay, like, we've put you in this position. What are you going to take out of these things that are happening and make better in our community? And then I haven't anything else to add on the amazing tips that the other two wonderful women have given. So those are just the ones I'm going to add for now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Thandi. Yeah. I learned from you the power of taking a pause when you've been asked a question to like digest it. I wish the world could see Thandi at caucus. You need to see it. It's beautiful to watch. You'll ask her a question and Sis will be like, okay, I don't care if there's a timer. I don't care if there's a crowd of people watching waiting for me to answer. I will stop however long I need to answer, to put this in my head the right way so I can say it properly. That is the time I will take to pause. So there's really nothing with the pause. If anything, it's not going to help your campaign if you're just saying words for the sake of saying them. So rather pause and then answer the question that's actually been asked. And asking for clarification is definitely not a crime. Beautiful. Thank you, Thandi. And yeah, just keeping up with current affairs, but also knowing the affairs of your residents, know your values, know some parts of your constitution at least, if not the whole thing. Beautiful. Thank you. So I know that a lot of people, when considering leadership roles, immediately think of the fact that they were sent to Stellenbosch University, number one, to get their degree, number two, to get their degree, number three, to get their degree. So now to add something on, like House Committee, it might look in their heads like completely taking away from the degree time. Every day you'll be in a meeting, every hour you'll be in a meeting, or every second hour there's an interview or something going on just because you're in House Committee. So what did your typical week or typical day look like as a House Committee member? And now I'm talking like meetings and commitments. And did you find that it really had a huge impact on your academics? You don't need to tell us that you went from 97 to 57. I mean, no. Just, did you have to adapt the way you study? Did you have to make more time to study? Did you have less time to study? All of those things. So how did your schedule look typically? And did you really feel that it affected your academics, positively or negatively? Let's start with Robynne.
So you were speaking about obligations, and it's just the worst obligation just rushed upon me. So the HAKA has the obligation of 6 o'clock every morning. You have to get up, you go sign out the door monitor, and you also have to go open the side gate. So obviously, if you're not getting up at 6 o'clock, people are going to know because the side gate is closed. You know, you haven't signed the sheet, the monitor's probably still waiting for you. You know, so that was one that really in the beginning was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Can't someone do this for me? But all of these obligations started shaping the way I work to make me more effective. Because if I wake up at 6 o'clock, I have class at 8, I'm not going to go back to bed. I'm going to get up, I'm going to start earlier, I'm going to maybe do some admin that I didn't do last night. And then now I come back from class, I maybe have a committee meeting because now we have more than 2 committees. Each committee needs to be run. The portfolios need to be up, you know. So now you have meetings from 4 to 6 or 4 to 7, for instance. And at the end of the day, it's not just your time, it's someone else's time that you're also now not wasting, but using. So it has to be effective. So all of these obligations and meetings that we had sort of just made me work more efficiently and more effective to sort of get to the point, not faster, but with the substantive, purpose of the meeting or substantive purpose of the job at hand, and then get that done so that I can also, have some sleep, because that is something you will lose out on at some point.
Yeah.
But it definitely did shape how I ran my schedule during the day. It was more to the point. It was effective. I didn't have much time to waste because I barely had time to, sneeze. So it definitely does force you to get into better time management habits.
So good. Thank you, Robynne. Yeah. And I think what you're touching on is that a lot of people think that having an empty plate or an empty year plate means that your time is more fulfilled, which isn't always the case. You can clear your plate up completely and then spend the whole day sleeping. So just because you have less to do doesn't mean that you are using that time, that extra time now, better. So thank you. Yeah, having more to do doesn't have to be a bad thing. Kristan, let's come to you.
Yeah, so in terms of a PSO, I think it's very easy to kind of slip between the cracks and, do nothing. I think I don't know how it is so much in terms of res, in terms of first-hand experience, but I think from a hardcore perspective, well, from a PSO perspective, in terms of being on a house committee, I would definitely say, your schedule and what your average day looks like depends on why you took up the position in the first place. I would have to say, like, in the sense of, for me at the time, student engagement was key, because I felt like, how could I be doing my role if I wasn't interacting or fulfilling my role if I wasn't interacting with the students that I represented? So coffees robbed me of a lot, financially and in other ways in terms of time. But it definitely it kind of made me realize, you can define, what you make of the role to a large degree. And I mean, if I reflect in terms of Eendrag, my role there, the amount I was willing to engage with the hardcore also determined, how, if you could say, good a job, I don't know, I was doing as a co-opted member of their team. So for me, it has a lot to do with your priorities. It has a lot to do in the sense of, how much do you want to commit of your own personal time toward the position. And I think for me, what is the thing that I realized one has to do, especially in terms of academics, because at the time when I was, my 2017 was my final year of my undergrad. And so obviously that's working towards, getting marks up for honors. And I was going high, things were looking good. And then there was, when I ran for Prim, because obviously you that's your first term starts from September. I went from this, I went very flat very quickly, and my academics, suffered quite a bit. And although I didn't end up doing the honors program that I wanted to, I mean, I was fortunate. That was one of the few, I suppose, that it worked out. I got into a different honors program, and I mean, now I'm doing my master's, which I wouldn't have expected. I thought it was the end of the world. But I think at the time, what's very important, I think what I learned is that you really need to position yourself and your interests compared to that of others in the environment. You need to assess where do your needs get left when you decide to sacrifice A to achieve B. And the most important thing I realized is that you need to commit. Like once you take that risk of, having that extra coffee date, or going to sit in one of your fellow hardcore members' rooms at 9 o'clock, come out at 1 a.m. in the morning. You need to understand the commitment and that you've taken, in the sense of decisions that you've made. And although we're not perfect, and although it's easy to regret, you also can't necessarily say you didn't gain at the same time. I think it's very important to determine that. So although, I mean, it's been quite a roller coaster of a journey, I ended up where I needed to be. And I think as long as you trust that, I think I think you'll come out the other end, hopefully employed one day. But yeah.
One day, whatever it takes. Or you could come out on this interview, you never know where it'll take you. And I'm pretty sure these interviews are going to ENCA at some point. So this is fame, people. This is fame we're building. But yeah, I love everything you're mentioning, Kristan, because it's all about your priorities and your self-discipline. And the thing is, when you are a leader, people usually only see the leader side of you and only really care about the leader side of you. So if you yourself are only going to care about your leadership responsibilities, nobody else is worrying about whether you've eaten breakfast. Did you gym? If you do that, then could never be me. Did you watch your daily dose of K-pop? Did you call your family, make sure everyone is okay? Like whatever it takes to make you whole, did you do those things? You need to be very disciplined about making sure you're dipping into each of those facets, because, just like you say, Chris, everything that you do, you are taking time away from something else, and be very intentional about what you are almost withdrawing time from to be part of the thing that you're part of. Awesome. Thank you. Thandi, I'm sure you've been ready to spew some fire there.
All the fire has been given. But I just want to add that it's really about, I wouldn't say it's easy to balance it. Like you can give balance in this position. I think the most important thing is juggling, because different things rise in importance as other things like decrease in the level of importance. So, for example, just looking at the layout of the year, orientation week is a really, really like busy week, especially when you're in Tygerberg, when you're having classes and having to attend to your house community duties. So maybe for that like week or that day or that session that you're in charge of, like really be then when you get into your academics, because that's the only way you'll be able to like survive orientation week. And I think with the portfolios that I had, those played really, really well to my strengths. So I think 2 of them are admin based. So I was able to get through my minutes for HARCA meetings and things like that, maybe like in the week when I have an hour at lunch, or maybe some extra time that I didn't normally have on other days to complete those other minuscule tasks that I had. But really looking at it practically, the only time regarding Huis, Francie, that you really have to be with the other HARCA members is at your HARCA meeting. And depending on what's on the agenda, it could be something from like 30 minutes to 3 hours. And definitely after our house committee camp, those meetings got longer and longer. But I think just knowing when to concentrate, as you said, knowing when to concentrate on your academics and knowing when to concentrate on your duties, so that you're not like faltering in either one. And then I think asking for help when you're drowning, because no one is perfect, and definitely all of us need help at some point. So yeah, I think that asking for help from your fellow members or from your vice primaria really is a really good thing to do and a really good tool to use. So yeah.
I love that, Thandi. Yeah. I think a lot of the time in leadership, we want to look really put together, and we're afraid to be honest about the fact that, okay, I need a little help now. I need a little assistance here. It doesn't mean that you're a bad leader. It doesn't mean people are going to lose faith in your entire vision for your portfolio. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, because then at least people will understand where you're at and what it is that you're juggling in your life, on top of being a HARCA member. Yeah, and with Tygerberg, welcoming has always been an experience, writing a test and then going to Fensters, or going to Fensters, connect, and then writing a test. But you really do make it work with your team. It's a give and take. Some people study while others take care of the newcomers, and you rotate, but it works. It works. So Thandi, I'll start with you on this next question. It's a bit more personal, I suppose. It's a bit more personal. And that is just in your term. Is there something that happened, something that you faced, or something that you did that was really challenging? It was really difficult. It was just a tough time, and you got through it. And like, how did you get through it? If you are willing to share what it was, or you can share just aspects of what it was, but just a difficulty that you faced in your term as Haka. Yeah, I see you thinking deep there.
Yeah, because I don't know if this is on the list of questions you said you were going to ask. So, yeah.
Gotta keep you on your toes. Did you think I'd tell you?
Awesome. I think it was definitely no, it wasn't in my term per se. It was just before my term started. So definitely, like 2019 wasn't my most favorite year. And then I wasn't so sure if I'd be able to apply to be a house committee member because of the pressures that I put on myself to be like perfect. Like, so just to give some context, I unfortunately failed a module in first semester, and so that really like took a toll on me, and I was just like, okay, so now how's the rest of my year going to look like, especially next year? Do I have to do like one module the whole of first semester? So I managed to restructure the modules that I had in 2019 and the modules that I had this year in 2020, so that I'm not like just doing one thing a semester. So definitely when that happened, like from, I think it was May, when I realized that I wouldn't be able to write my examinations up until just maybe like 3 days before the applications needed to be handed in. I was just like, no. First of all, probably there's gonna be more medical students that are going to apply, and because our residence is made of mainly medical students, I was like, maybe they will get the positions because they're representing the majority of the medical students to begin with. And then I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to be in this position and I want to represent the people in the allied health sciences, then I shouldn't stop there, because maybe someone is looking at me and saying, oh, maybe I want to be like Thandi one day. So that was a really difficult like situation for me to navigate, simply because I had the misconception that if you're in a leadership position, you need to have your whole life together. And like now in all of this, I just realized that actually you absolutely don't. And also you made it really, really difficult because Wama was our primaria in 2018, 2019. And she was just like, you never saw her breaking a sweat except for if she was running to class or to hospital. So I was just like, surely... surely you're all rounded. But I think this season or term of being a house committee member has really shown me just if you want to do something and you have a heart to do that thing that you've set out to do at the beginning, it will work out regardless of whether like you're crying yourself at night. Or I didn't cry in my term because everything that I had portfolio wise was something that played to my strengths. But definitely that was the hardest thing pre-Haka. And then during Haka, it was just, I would say, maybe motivating my communities to participate. But that's just what I had.
Thank you. Thank you for being so honest and allowing us to be privy to your story. And also just, I commend you for knowing everything that you went through and still going into Haka and applying and being brave enough to do that. Yeah. I think a lot of the time we look at our past failures and use those to almost define how much of an asset we'll be in the team as a leader. But for everything that you failed in, there's a long list of things you've actually succeeded in that you're refusing to acknowledge. So there's that voice that's telling you you can be Haka. That's why you're watching this. That's why you have that application form downloaded. That's why you're stressing about caucus already. And yes, there's that part of you that goes, but think of all the things that could go wrong. But as much time as you spend listening to that you that's reminding you of the things that could go wrong, listen to that you that's also telling you that you can do it and why the house or the PSO needs you to do it. Thank you, Thandi. Robynne, we'll come to you.
So I think the most difficult thing for me during Haka term was just remembering who I am as a person, detached from this blazer. It's just remembering who I am as a person, because I feel like when myself and my team started the Haka journey, the previous Haka, they left behind humongous shoes to fill, and people, they will hold you accountable to the blazer and not the person that you are. As soon as you become Haka, they look at you as this Haka body that now needs to just be a Haka. You can't have emotions. You can't be overwhelmed. And I think that's what got to me the most, because here I am trying to pull together a Fences production 2 days before Fences. No one is trying to work with me. Things are falling apart, but it is expected of me from other members, not in the Haka per se, but like from the house and communities around us, that you need to present yourself as a Haka. You're not allowed to be overwhelmed. And I think that was the greatest struggle, just being able to admit to myself, I'm still a person. I am still allowed to have feelings and to have my own views and ways I do things outside of the blazer, because people are really going to forget that, hey, you're Robynne, because they're going to look at you, you're Haka. You're not allowed to, you're not allowed to act like that. You're not allowed to do certain things. And just remembering that you're still a person and being kind to yourself, because things aren't always going to go your way in your Haka term. You're going to have a lot of no's. You're going to have a lot of people that don't want to cooperate, or things that are just not going your way towards your vision for a portfolio. And just remembering that you're allowed to feel, and you're allowed to be, and you're allowed to ask for some time. There's nothing wrong with, taking care of yourself and focusing maybe on academics or your family or some personal time. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, as long as you have the courage to step out and speak about it. Speak to your team, like, hi, I need some help. Yeah, that I think that was very challenging, because being able to delegate is not easy as well, because you always want to control how you execute your vision. And asking for help was a very big step that I needed to take. I needed to learn as well.
Sure. Thank you, Robynne. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that, it's beautiful, because, when you were talking, I was thinking of how the world would react if President Cyril Ramaphosa just started crying during one of his statements. Like, people would be like, what are you doing? So people do really learn to see you as, I don't care what's happening in your life. You decided to be my president. You decided to be Haka. If you already know that a lot of people are thinking that, now don't do it to yourself as well. Don't you think that too? Because you're really going to lose yourself in the process. Yeah. You are human, and you're allowed to be human, and build the support system that's going to remind you of your humanity throughout your term. Thank you, Robynne. Kristan, I'm sure you've got some notes written down ready to share.
I think Robynne and Thandi covered it quite beautifully, but I think all I have left to really add, I think for me personally, a challenge I had and also observed, because I must say, being a co-opted Haka member, it's a very different feeling. As much as you feel it's your team, you experience the team from a very different lens and perspective, because, you didn't come up with these people, and you're not living in the residence. So it was a very different experience I had. But I think team dynamic I've experienced and I've observed is a big challenge. And I think especially you need to acknowledge to what extent you can expect from others, because to learn, unlearn, and relearn is not easy for everyone. And I think for me, what I experienced specifically during my House Committee term in my PSO, which made me want to run for Prim, is kind of and it's been said, I think, by Robynne and Thandi, in terms of the expectation of the role, of the title, of the power or the perceived power that the position has. And I think it's also in the sense of, people are going to look at it two ways. Are you going to continue the existing legacy and state of affairs, or are you actually going to do something to kind of shake the system? And I think it's a fine balance in the sense of, defining, what's your contribution going to be. And it's hard to maintain that level of, you came in with a purpose as an individual, but at the end of the day, you do formulate part of a team. And I think grappling with that, and that's where conflict arises, because everyone has a different way of how they foresee, although you agreed on a shared vision as a team, everyone has a very different way of how to go about achieving that. And also tying in with the previous question, the degree of sacrifice they're willing to make for that. So I would say that was the biggest challenge I've observed, I've experienced. And I mean, this is not even necessarily just limited within a student structure in terms of a resident or a PSO. I mean, from societies to, everything. I mean, task teams, even how many task teams on this campus. But, the degree of success is determined by those that ironically signed up for the role, but kind of, they decide to call quits like halfway. So that's what I've always found difficult in navigating in terms of team dynamics and what you can expect from others.
Yeah, that's really beautiful, because I think a lot of the time you come into a leadership role where you have to work with the team, and you really, really, bottom of your heart, you really want your team to get along. You really want everyone to be friends, but sometimes it's just not going to happen. We're not all going to be friends, but as long as the team dynamics are not hindering progress and the fulfillment of the vision and people working in their portfolio, that's what you really want, is your team to actually produce results. What is your contribution going to be? So you can fight here and there. It happens, clashes happen, but it doesn't have to be kumbaya, but it does need to benefit the house. So that's the goal of the team dynamics. Thank you, Kristan. And you were talking now, you mentioned perceived power that the roles have. And my next question is riding off the back of that, and that is, I think a lot of students come into university wanting to make some impact beyond getting their degree. You see problems in your res, in the space you're living in class, whatever it is, and you really want to do something about it. And maybe there's someone thinking, how can I do something about some of the things I want to change about the university when I am in House Committee? Where does House Committee extend to? Where is my influence when I'm in House Committee? Do you have meetings with management? Do doors open where you can fight about the price of food? I don't know, whatever it is. Or do you find that people trust you more so you can invest in individuals more, who will then later become the president of the world? You never know. So where is the scope of influence for a House Committee member? Kristan, I'll start with you, because you kind of, you spark this.
So the scope of influence, I think it really determines on, your own perception of the role as well, obviously the perception of others. But I must say, I think you are your worst enemy when it comes to leadership, because you can really make or break, the progress that you can create with the position. And although cannot be denied that there obviously are certain factors that are out of your control, but I think to identify what are the factors that are in your control and what are those that are not. And I think often it's very easy to say, oh, I sent the email, there was no response, as an example. But it's like, you're telling me there's only individual in this whole university that deals with it. I'm sure they have an assistant. I'm sure they have someone in the office that works with them. There's ways. And I think that's where having institutional knowledge is very key. Understanding the structures, understanding the resources at your disposal, because they are, and they're very vast, and there's an amazing. It's amazing, and also in a way, the way that university works is in a way that can be very strategic to any position if you make the effort to understand how it works. All roles are interconnected. Someone knows someone because they were, I don't know where, but and I think it's looking at this, that we're part of a broader ecosystem essentially, and do not let the perception of, especially, I mean, and I think when we talk about succession and handovers, it's very easy for you to be influenced by the person that had the position before you, that said, oh, we did this, it was impossible, don't even try, don't go there. And it's the thing is, you don't know the lens they were looking at the situation through. So I think to always trust, in the sense of, if you feel like this is lacking, or there's a gap, or this hasn't been done, to go out and do your own investigation, build a support network. And that's why networking is very important, not just within your resident space or your PSO space, from societies. We have the resources to enhance the student experience. All it is like I think it was said before, is going out and asking and engaging, and just really being curious, I think is just the key to be a leader. Especially at Stellenbosch University, you can really manipulate the system to your advantage. I mean, yes, there's still, to a degree, the buck does stop eventually, and you get to a stage where you're sitting in a room of people and you feel like, why am I here? Am I here as a quota? To say, oh, there was a student in the room, kind of thing. So don't get me wrong, there's definitely there's certain limitations you have, but I think to raise your voice, I think is like, you're a representative, and I think that's something to always remember, that you do belong in whatever room you find yourself, and to not waste that seat. That's one thing. I mean, looking back, I think it's very important. Like, I was never as outspoken in terms of in other spaces outside of my environment, and I wish I was. Like, looking back 4 years ago when I was a house committee, I mean, even when I was prim, like, I wish there was a lot of things I was more outspoken about, and it was only like when I got the advantage the opportunity to enter into more diverse spaces. I mean, within Eendrag, I mean, as the only female and in a whole male race, you learn, you have to speak up, because there's a certain expectation. I mean, as taxing and a bit unrealistic, but conversation for another day. There's an expectation that of what you can do, and I think you also, as far as you can, I mean, within the bounds of prioritizing your self-care, to really step up or step back or step out completely, like, to be honest. But that's what
Yeah, that was so good. Literally everything you said should just be a podcast. Someone put that on Spotify, please. Really, really beautiful. Yeah, so good. And Kristan, I just want to ask you just one compounded question, because I do know that you have to go at 5:30. So just in case I don't get to you again, so you can slip out after this. So my next compounded question for you is, considering everything you've been through, the challenges, the impact Haka had on your life and your uni life, good and bad. If you could go back in time to the you that was applying for Haka the first time and the second time, maybe even prim, and everything else in between, if you could go back to the Kristan that was applying for Haka, knowing everything and having seen everything that you would go through, would you still tell that Kristan to apply for Haka? And then the last bit is, if people forget everything you said, although it's impossible, if people forget everything you said in this interview, what would you like your final parting words to be? It could be advice to someone who's on the edge of applying, a little encouragement, something you wish someone had told you before you applied, anything, just what your final word will be. So would you run again? Would you tell yourself to run? And your final word.
To answer your first question, definitely. I think me applying for Haka at the time was because I wasn't satisfied with the existing state of affairs. I felt more could have been done. And I felt, if you're not willing to take that step to try and, to construct and deconstruct and co-create and all those lovely buzzwords. You know, who is, and I think a lot of the time, like I've said earlier, you know, a lot of the time you can really define the impact that you make. And like, I think being hardcore, or just, actually, I can't even really tie it down to being hardcore. I think being a representative in a formal leadership structure is really the catalyst to you unlocking your contribution to the student community as a whole. And I think once you realize that the position is greater than the environment, the position is in a broader context. And I think to tie it down to the simple thing of, you know, do you want to lead, I think is a simple key takeaway. And to say, you know, like my final parting words, I would just say to someone, you know, on the fence of, you know, should I do it? Should I not? Is it going to take too much time? Am I experienced or not? You know, I tie it back, I think, to what I said, which is to be curious, because being curious will lead you to places you never imagined before. You know, like, I think a lot of the roles I've taken up over the last 6 years on this campus was because I was curious of the system. And as I learned each system and as I learned each structure, I kind of really saw, you know, how does it actually connect to our broader, you know, South African community, you know, and I think that's very important to understand that this is really a component of something so much larger. And I don't think you should see it in terms of like be bound by the nitty-gritty, you know, I don't know how to run an event, I'm not sure how to send an email. It's those things you can pick up, you know, that's what Google's for. You know, like, and understand, you know, there's certain things you can bring to the table that's makes you valuable in the space. And I think to always remember, you know, what you're bringing to the table, and I think to know who you are, and to ensure that this doesn't eat you up at the end, because I think a lot of people get eaten up by leadership. They come out the other end and they're like, whoo, never again. You know, and it's sad. It's very sad. And I think you need to identify what recharges you, you know, what is going to remind you about why you did what you did, and ensure that you keep on taking up space, because it's very important. Yeah, so that's just, a few words I would say.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I love just be curious. Be curious. They say curiosity killed the cat, but can you show me a cat that has ever died of curiosity? No. So be curious. You would be amazed where it's going to lead you. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Kristan. Robynne, let's come to you with the first question. What was my first question to Kristan?
I was just about to ask you, because I was so involved in Chris's answer now that, you know, even me, I'm like, what did Mama ask me?
I'm pretty sure it was about the scope of influence of
Oh,
house committee.
Yes. So a lot of the time, like Chris said, like you can feel inferior in your positions once you've received your first no. I think that was my experience. Once I received my first no, or maybe not this way, maybe that way, that's when like the position to me felt inferior in a sense. But like Chris said, knowing the structures, knowing how to get whatever you need to get across, like knowing that from your HARCA you have your Prim, from your Prim you have the POCA, from POCA you have SRC, and. So just knowing the structures and knowing how to navigate them. And like Chris said, like having someone on the inside almost in a way does help. And knowing that you're in the role for a reason. So even if you're just affecting change at the level of your community as a HARCA, for example, you're still doing something. You're still able to sort of engage and send out members of your house or members of your PSO in your community into structures on campus. Like something that has I'm in awe of all the time is that the first years that I received in my section, for example, just having those engagements with them in like section meeting or on committees, seeing them the year later on campus, like in different roles, just seeing that, you know, you've started something. And then also just being able to see that the people around you that you have engaged with are taking it further, that it also has the power to make you go further. Because when I tell you, after Haka, I was one of those people. I was like, ma'am, I'm done now. Thank you. Take my blazer. I'm done. It's time out. But essentially after that, I went and I started facilitating the newly elected leaders conferences and just engaging with the new leaders. Again, I was like, I want more. And then I went and I was on the other side of this whole Haka process, where I was a monitor and I got to observe, you know, what it's really like from an outsider's perspective. And just keeping in the sense of, you know, engaging in the community and seeing what works where and what doesn't work. That was something so important. Just staying involved and knowing where I can take what was very important. And it's going to be exhausting at some point. And you're going to be like, yo, I need to retire now. This leadership thing is, you know, it's enough now. But it's just when you have this hunger and this passion for like the inequalities that you see, for example, like it doesn't end. It doesn't end. And just because you feel that the role that you're presently in is inferior doesn't mean you should stop. Because you have that hunger, you should, you know, continue going.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I love, because what I'm hearing both you and Kristan say is that it's almost the scope of your influence it's as unlimited as you'd like it to be. You know, it depends where you want to take the fight. And I really, really love the fact that you said your first no, you know, don't linger on that first no. That first no does not mean stop in your tracks. It's just a no. Keep going until there is a yes. That's really, really beautiful. Yeah. And you know, you're talking about impacting on an institutional level, you know, management and the no's, but also impacting people in your section, first years, newcomers, who are later going to be on ARCA, on SRC, on who knows what else. So you get to change the world. Look at me, even me, I want to be Haka now. But you're changing the university environment one way or another. It just depends on where your vision is taking you. Nice, thank you. Thandi, I hope your network hasn't kicked you out.
It actually had, but made it back. I actually was very confused by a question when you asked it, because, like, I think things are a little bit different on the Tygerberg campus. I don't know, but everything just sounded very foreign to me, and I was just like, what did I do in my term? No, but I think I just want to say that your scope of influence is as wide or as like narrow as you'd want it to be, as you set it out to be. I think Robynne had said that if you're influencing your section, that's really, really great. Even if it's not your whole section, even if it's one person that is coming to your section meetings, or like the 5 that come, or everyone. Even if, like, for me particularly, as I had mentioned before, like, majority of the residence spaces on the Tygerberg campus are medical students, and the allied health science students are like make up a smaller fraction of that. So my scope of influence, or like my vision going in, was to close the gap that close the gap of lack of representation of people from the allied health sciences. And I think I did well, because quite a number of people then came up to me and registered for a leadership course that the Frederik van Zyl Institute is hosting, and majority of those were allied health science students. And I'm really, really excited as well to see the other candidates that will be coming forward to be House Committee members in this new, or applying to be House Committee members in this new term. So I think it's as wide or as narrow as you'd want it to be. Obviously, depending on what your role is on your team. For example, if you are the primaria and the vice primaria, obviously you have more weight and more power to your voice as opposed to a house committee member who's in charge of um, welcoming and is secretary and wants to fight management on reducing, I don't know, waste products in the residence spaces. I don't know, bad example, but I hope that makes some sort of sense.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. I'm very passionate about that style of leadership. For me, whenever I step into leadership, I never come in thinking that I am the answer. I always have the mentality that I am opening the door for the answer to come through. So if more allied health students are applying, who knows what they might do in the future? Who knows where that's going to take them? So don't come into leadership thinking that you are the only answer. Yes, you're part of the answer, but your task might be to pull in more of the answer after you. So representation is really powerful in leadership. Thank you. So Thandi, let's stick with you, and then I'll give you the same compounded question I gave to Chris as we draw to a close of our interview. Don't want to finish people's data, and I'm sure people have to go study and stuff now that recess is over. So yeah, just to recap the question, it was, if you could go back in time, would you run for Hawker again? And what is your final parting word for everybody?
Definitely I would run again. I'd probably fill in my applications a little bit sooner. Currently in the position of debating and fighting with myself and my friends about whether or not I should run for vice primaria, and trying not to look at the other candidates. So this is a word for myself and for everybody else who's here. Like, do it, fill in your application sooner, and it's okay to be a hot mess when you send those in, but just do it earlier. And my parting words would be just to seek mentorship from anyone who was in the position that you're applying for or you're hoping to get into. Seek inspiration from, draw the inspiration from the people that you see really doing well and like, awesome, what keeps you going on up until now. Even as I'm considering filling in my applications, I'm just like, how did Wama do all that she did without crying? And I think I was one of those people that would get to her door last year and like knock, and she would keep quiet and act like she's not there. But fortunately, she loved me so much and she would let me in. So I really would say seek mentorship and advice from the people in the positions that you're hoping to get into. And then have a clear vision for not only what you want to do in your community, but what you want to get out of it. Obviously, there's things like pandemics that can put a hold onto the plans that you have for your community, but there's so much that you learn from being a leader, like time management. My time management has gone up. If I had free time, I'd probably sleep, but now I'm like, oh, the free time that I have to like do other things, I should be doing things to be productive. And all around, just self-development is a really good skill that you learn or take out of being a leader. Then obviously like something nice to put on your CV, so that's always good. But that's those are my parting words.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, no, people must be honest about the fact that it does look good on your CV. But obviously you don't come in just for the CV, because trust me, halfway in you'll be like, I get it, it's not worth it, I'm going to the most. But thank you for those words, Thandi. And yeah, mentorship is really big, and just do it. Just do it. If you're really second guessing, just do it. And don't compare yourself to other candidates. You are not them, you are yourself. Beautiful. So Thandi, just do it. Robynne, let's come to you.
First of all, Thandi, I back you. Go for it. Do the most goal. Secondly, Nopi did the same thing. She would act like she's not in her room. But then I learned, she fake locked her door, hey, but then I learned her code. And then one day I just caught her chilling on a couch. I was like, okay.
You can tell Nopi and I were friends.
But I would 10 out of 10 do it again. You do have to sacrifice some parts of yourself, like nap time, I think was the worst to part with for me. But you do have to give certain things up, but you also gain a lot more. You gain engagement on a level that you did not have before you started your hardcore journey. You gain time management skills, for example. You gain insight to structures. You gain insight to how to engage with people on a more tight-knit level as well. So I think because hardcore taught me so much, I definitely wouldn't mind going back and relearning, unlearning, like Chris said, co-creating, all of these words that are being spewed at us every day. But I would definitely do it again. And I would tell myself, first of all, it's not that deep. The caucus part, it's not that deep. These are people that you live with. These are people, some of which know you. They know your heart. They know what your vision is. They know how you operate. So no one is there to look at you in a malicious way, first of all. So stop believing that people are there to judge you and start acknowledging that they're there, because first of all, they have to be there. But I mean, they're there and they're listening to you and what you would like to bring, and that it is your moment in that time. And then for the rest of the hardcore term, I would say don't take the job too seriously. Yes, there are definitely times where you have to be organized and you have to do certain things because everything needs to get done. But at the same time, don't fret on this committee that couldn't meet tonight and not finding a meeting time, because we all have phones and it's things always have a solution. So don't force too many things. Just take it in your stride. There's always going to be help, whether it is a friend, a hardcore member, your house mother, your house father. There's always going to be assistance. There's nothing that you cannot do with the people around you. Even calling home, I would ask my parents, listen, this is happening. What would you do in your situations? And there's always going to be assistance. It's not that deep, period. It's not that deep. You will always, you'll always get it done. And don't take the position for granted either. Go to the engagements, go to the meetings, go to the cluster convener caucus, get to know the spaces, get to know your community, and really engage in the role.
Yeah. So many good points there. So much wisdom. That too needs to be a podcast. This whole thing will probably be a podcast. I need to work on that once I'm done struggling with YouTube. But I really love when you say the caucus is not that deep, because I think a lot of people think that people take notes or record your answer from caucus and then play it for you every day that you are haka. We all have these memories of caucus, but you don't really remember the details. I don't remember that this specific person said this really funny answer or whatever. You just remember how you felt at the caucus, but nobody tweets what you did at caucus and then holds it over your head your whole term. So don't let that caucus be the reason that your house and your community loses out on having your creativity influence that space. And I love that you're also bringing in, and it's been coming out throughout the entire interview from all of you, that you're not just giving to the role of haka. There's a lot that you get from it as well. There's a lot that it pours into you as well. So it's not just this endless term of sacrifice. It is going to pour into you too. And take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. So your role and your responsibilities are very important, but don't now treat your whole life with the sternness of haka and a constitution. Yo, so beautiful. Can't wait to put this up on YouTube. Can't wait for the world to hear this. Thank you again to Robynne, to Thandi, and Kristan in her absence. I'm sure she's gone now. Thank you for taking the time on a gorgeous Monday afternoon to just invest in the future of the roles that you have taken on. I say this to everyone, but I mean it every time, and that is, it speaks a lot to the character of your leadership, that you not just care about the fact that you were in it and when your term was done, you were done. You actually care about how it is being stewarded to the next generation. So to take the time to actually invest in the future of what you are not a part of anymore, or what you won't be part of anymore, says a lot about what your heart was in the role, and that it wasn't about the blazer and the title, but it's actually about how important the role is and how much a student can do in it. Thank you to everyone who came through to watch. I really hope this clarified a lot of questions and gave you a lot of insight. It is going to be up on YouTube soon, if my network allows, by the end of today. Yeah, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Have a lovely Monday further. Goodbye.